family moved into Eggers Crossing. We moved in 1941. And Eggers Crossing was the worst section of Lawrence Township. It was the poorest section.
The interesting dynamic here is that we all went, Fred Vereen and I, to the same school, Eldridge Park School, from kindergarten to 8th grade. So we got to know one another as friends and individuals. I don't remember any kind of racism here because we all shared a similar background. We're all poor. Where I noticed the difference is when we went to the Trenton school system, and there they were ever so slightly segregated, where the black children were put in a sort of a lower kind of grades, and the white children were in another grade. And I wasn't aware of that separation until I really thought about it years later.
We were separated from the rest of the town by the railroad tracks. So the railroad tracks was the dividing line, and as you all know, the saying is when you go to any town, if you want to find where black folks live, just look for the railroad tracks. They always put us on the other side of the railroad tracks and tell me it's the worst area of that community, and certainly we were. And when I became of age, that's what started my activism, is going to town hall, seeking improvements in our area.
I came down with a group of men who had turkeys, and we went into a home and we were giving the turkey to the folks there. And I looked down and I could see through the floor to the ground. And I realized the house was as cold inside as it was, this was December, as it was outside. There was no heat. Everyone was dressed inside the way you would be if you're going to go outside, and there was holes in the floor through which you could see the ground. And I was amazed and shocked. And so the next week I went to the housing officer of Lawrence Township. And I said, why did you condemn that building? It's not fit for human habitation. And he said, where are the people going to go?
We got a group of people from throughout the town, and it just shows we had real diversity. We had folks who were doctors, lawyers, planners that came together and worked with us to develop Eggers Crossing Village.
I was a practicing lawyer in Lawrence Township. By coincidence, I had known Fred Vereen casually from the fact that we went to the same junior high school in Trenton. But I really didn't know the work he was doing. And I got a call one day at my law office, which was here in Lawrenceville, to talk to somebody who was interested in doing housing that would be supported in some way by the State Housing Finance Agency.
First step was to try and form a nonprofit corporation as sponsor for a prospective project, and then to talk with the State Housing Finance Agency in order to get financing.
During this project, during the process of developing Eggers Crossing Village, we had many roadblocks, and one of the ones of interest was the land. When we first started, we knew we needed land, and the piece came to mind down the end of Johnson Avenue, which at one time was a dump and was also later farmland. And I knew the people who owned that. They were an old family in Lawrence named Pillar. So I went to them and asked them if the land was for sale, and they told me yes. And I asked if they would give us a community group who was interested in building some housing there, an option on the land, and they said yes. So then I came back to the committee the next week and told them that they would give us an option, and they gave me permission to go back and ask them to give an offer, and if they would take, say, $5,000 as an option. Then when I went back to ask the people for an option, they said, well, Mr. Vereen, we gave you the option. I said, no, you didn't. I said, I didn't come back. She said, well, a week after you came in, some men came by and they wanted to take an option on the land. And we gave it to them. So, I was surprised. So I went back to our committee and told them, and so it wasn't 2 or 3 days later, I get a phone call that this group wanted to meet with our committee. And so I set it up, and we met, and these men came, and they had a proposition for us. They were the ones who took option on the land. Now, what had happened, evidently somebody in our group told these developers of what we were going to do and got them to go in ahead of us and get an option. They said, we will build the project, and then we will turn it over to you, and you will do what you want with it. It didn't sound right to us, and I knew, and most of us on the committee knew the kind of housing we wanted to build. We knew we wanted to build quality housing, but we knew that somebody else coming in like these guys were going to come in and build the cheapest thing with the cheapest material that they could, and then they leave, and we'd be stuck holding the bag. So after some discussion, I finally said to them, I said, I tell you what you do. You build the housing, and we will make sure that nobody in this community, and especially black people, will move into your housing. And their jaw dropped, and then they left. And they had a year's option on the land, and so we continued doing the work that was necessary in our process. And after a year, they didn't do anything. After a year, we went back to the people, and they gave us the option. That was just one of numerous hurdles that we encountered during our process.
By the time Mr. Vereen got to me, he had organized an entity, I think it was called Lawrence Nonprofit Housing, which was one of the elements that you had to have before you could apply for a state mortgage, which is how this was financed. And that organization had various religious groups. The property was not zoned for multifamily housing, so that was an issue. The property, I think, had utilities. I think water and sewer service were there, so that was less of a problem. But the process that we would have to go through to get permission to build was to go before something called the Zoning Board of Adjustment, which is in the township, and which hears matters where you're asking for some special consideration from the strict code of the ordinance. The ordinance here, I think, was something like called residential 3, which meant you could build single-family houses on smaller lots, but you could not build without special permission multifamily housing. The good news was that just before they came to see me, there had been a case in the state of New Jersey, in the city of Englewood, which had provided that if you wanted to build low and moderate income housing in the suburbs, which is what Lawrenceville is, the very fact that you wanted to do that would be considered by law as a special reason to get a variance. So the process was to go to the zoning board, and we applied. The process was not easy because there were clearly people who, not even in the immediate neighborhood, but in the community, who saw this as a project not for people in Lawrence, but for people in Trenton. First of all, you have to understand that most of the people objecting were not living right here. Geographically, they were in the newer communities, they were further removed from the site. And their objections were almost all out of ignorance. The hearing dragged out. We would start and we would stop, they would bring in other witnesses, and we'd go on and on. So as it was dragging out, the agreement to buy the land came to an end. And if we didn't control the land, then we couldn't have a project. So it was my idea to buy the ground. And the way we did it is we sought out 10 people who were of like mind, and I went to the bank that I was on the board of at the time, which was the Broad Street National Bank in Trenton. And I got the bank to agree to lend us $100,000 on the basis that I would bring 10 people in, and each of them would sign a promissory note that they were personally obligated to pay back this $10,000. And we found 10 people, the bank made us a loan. We closed title to the property, and the property thus was in the name of the entity, with the entity owing those of us who put up our credit to pay it back.
I think the most difficult part was facing the myopic opinions and the anger of people who were so against this, who were so sure that it was going to be a disaster, who could not see any reason why they had to go ahead with this thing. The lack of any kind of compassion for people who were living in unfit, not habitable conditions in the town.
The vote was such that there was an automatic appeal to the town council.
It was a tremendous uproar in the town about it. There was a public meeting held on the potential change. There were so many people who came to that meeting that they had to hold it in the high school auditorium.
That was a very, very moving hearing for me because so much had gone into it, and we were so close to the end of really having a project that the vote ended up, I think was 3-2, and I don't think it was on party lines because there were both Republicans and Democrats. And I'll never forget that the deciding vote was by a man who had been mayor from time to time. I don't think he was the mayor at that time, named Lloyd Carver, who was a wonderful man. He was an educator. He lived in, I think he grew up in Lawrence Township. And he was a deciding vote. He voted yes, and we won. The result of that was that we could then get into the real details of what the buildings would look like, where they would sit, what amenities there would be, what we could do about the total amount of construction, which would reflect itself in the rents that would be paid. And that probably took another 12 months before we actually had all the permits and the approval from the state agency, which was the Housing Finance Agency, to build the project.
So there was all kinds of help from all over the town. broke ground in 1972, and that was a long haul, and it was still very controversial. I think the teachers were afraid of what it was going to be, like when all those kids came into the school system. But the result was that we not only got the housing built, but they were able to tear down the dilapidated housing in the community.
I think one of the most emotional nights for me as an individual was that Fred Vereen had a little party after the groundbreaking at his house. And I guess almost all of us that were really involved were there. And I remember holding hands and singing "We Shall Overcome," which never meant a lot to me until this project.
Oh my.
And I think one of the other interesting things that probably someone else has talked about this, but the man who was the architect for the project was a man named John Zavosik, who unfortunately has passed away. And John had his office in a building on Route 1. And in the basement of that building, which by the way was an old schoolhouse, in the basement of that building, this was in West Windsor, up near Princeton, there was a man who was just getting started as an artist named Johnson. And he had kind of followed along in the project because there was so much conversation about it in the architectural office. And he asked if he could make a contribution by way of a special sign. And the sign that's out in front of this project, which has 3 children playing on it, he, with the help of Fred Vereen, found 3 children who lived in the area. Of course, none of them lived in the project because there was no project. And he used them as models, and he created that sign, which was approved. And that sign is a sign with figures by Seward Johnson, who is probably one of the most famous modern American sculptors.
I was simply seeking a place to raise my family, and I lived in the community. And when I got married at a young age, I needed a place to live, and this was a new facility that was established in my neighborhood, and simply went through the application process and came here. It was a familiar community, and it was a brand new facility. I would say that I'm not sure that it's changed. As I look at it, the secret, or not the secret, the most significant piece about Eggers Crossing Village is its longevity, that it has survived. I moved here in 1974, and I can say with a fair degree of certainty that this place looks better than it looked in 74 when I first lived here. And that is something that the people from the Nonprofit Housing Association and under the leadership of Fred Vereen can take, and the community can take a great deal of pride in, that this place has sustained itself, it has enriched itself, and it is a place where families can live and flourish, as I did.
The kids arrive from Lawrence Township Public Schools by bus, and the kids they come in, and the teachers meet the kids here once they get off from their job at school. And the kids come in, and the first thing they do, they come in and they have lunch, they have a snack. You know, it's a long day at school, and then we prepare them for the after-school program. And what we do is we have kids broken into groups according to the age level. Kindergartens with the kindergarten, second, third, and so forth. And each grade level have a dedicated teacher to that group. And what we do, we provide academic enrichment for all of the children, providing math skills, language arts skills, all different types of skills, homework completion, and so forth.
Interesting. How do you think this program helps to enhance the neighborhood, the children, and so forth?
Oh, well, see, we're targeting this young age group of children, which is vital because once kids become adolescents, it's hard to try to change, their minds and how they think. So once we have, children that are in kindergarten through first grade, kindergarten through third grade, we try to provide a foundation for them in enrichment skills so that they can grow up to be vital citizens and be a contributing member of society.
What is the focus right now? What are you focusing on as of like today?
Well, today we're in the last week of our summer enrichment program, and that program is a 6-week program that started on June the 25th and ends on August the 3rd. And in the summer enrichment program, we actually have 2 programs in one. During the morning, we have the teachers here from Monday to Thursday from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11:30 in the morning. And they provide academic enrichment for the summer enrichment students. Then in the afternoon, we have the afternoon staff that comes in and provide recreation, swimming, arts and crafts, and so forth in the afternoon, and organized games.
Well, can you further explain the connection between the schools and your program?
Yes, most of our teachers that work in the program come from the school district here in Lawrence Township. We get a lot of support from the superintendent and a lot of support from the community. So the connection is that basically, we're collectively trying to work together to make sure that these kids get a good education. And in order for us to do that, then we have to work together.
As you mentioned, I'm a senior research scientist at ETS, and I work in the validity division, the research division, with a focus on validity. And what we really do is make sure tests work in the way that we would like them to work. And I'm also an expert in program evaluation, really trying to figure out if programs are working in the way that people would like them to work, which is how I got involved with ECV.
Well, when we first started, it really, the program was very small.
Very different.
And very, very different from what it looks like today.
Yeah.
My beginning was 2003.
I think I was beginning of 2000 maybe. And I started off as a volunteer in the program, just to get some parents to come in and help and teachers that they asked to come in to help. But then we really saw a need for these children to get some help after school, not just with homework help, but just in general with all the subject areas.
Once we changed over to the enrichment model, that really strengthened the program. Once we became more than just homework help, and we actually grouped the children by grade level and had them circulate through your math room and my language arts room to give them extra help, to give them extra help in those subject areas in addition to what they were receiving in school and in addition to the homework help.
And I think that's been very beneficial for these children because it really lets them do some of the things that they need to be doing, not just practice of some of the things that they learn in school, but I know in the math room we have computers available so that they're able to go on the computers and do some of the things that the other children do after school. It's like going on the computers, working on some math, whether it's IXL or
we can hook them up with RAS Kids with some of these.
Right, for reading.
One other aspect, I think, of the program is that we have a parents group now that started 2 years ago, and the parents are functioning as a unit, raising funds for the program, and they're now starting to do things as a group of parents from the center. We have just this weekend, as for instance, they're getting together and they're taking the children to Disney on Ice. We have a reading initiative that was started probably 5 or 6 years ago. I had been doing some research and finding that it's really important for these children to have an opportunity to read one-on-one with an adult, to get that full attention and have that interaction between just two people. And so I started Pizza Pages. The kids are reading one-on-one with another adult from the program. If it's a teacher or volunteer, we have volunteers from the prep school and Rider University that come in. But it has to be done there. For every 10 books they read, we have a pizza party about every 6 weeks. 10 books in 6 weeks gets them a ticket to the pizza party. And that's our Pizza Pages initiative.
I mean, kids love it. They love doing that. And it's wonderful to come in when we're getting close to that deadline and we see like the kids in every nook and cranny with books in their hands, and they really enjoy that a lot.
And we also do poetry club. Mr. Fred Alessi, who is a published poet and author who lives in our community and has been extremely generous to the program in every area, comes in once a week and has been for the past 6 years to run a poetry club with the kids. And it's interesting because many times kids are kind of resistant to writing and they don't know what to write about, or they don't want to start, or he has these kids writing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and expanding on subjects that he might start with a tiny thread of a thought about something, and they take off with it. The culminating activity is our poetry slam that we have in June, where the kids get up and they get to read their poems for the other students in the program, parents, relatives, and staff members.
The future, what I like to see is you guys, you young folks, guys and gals, taking the lead in a lot of the areas that you're being exposed to. And the most important thing is not to forget where you come from, and come back and give the children in Eggers Crossing Village, and not just Eggers Crossing Village, but the children that in every child valued. These kids now we're giving them a foundation. We're giving them a foundation that even some of you have not had. I know I didn't have it. So this is you and them are our future. We need you to do what I've done. And you know, if we can magnify some of the things that our leaders, our black leaders, have done in the community, that's the future. You're our future, and that's what I want to see happen. I want to see some of you really taking the bull by the horn and doing some positive things to help bring, and I don't care where you go, it doesn't have to be here in Lawrence. You know, most of you are going to, you don't hardly know where you're going to end up in this country or in another country. But there's always people in need, and there's always going to be people in need. So you have to develop your life, and don't forget about reaching back and pulling some folks up if you get up. And of course you're going to do that.